Hey guys, welcome back. This is the third part in the tutorial series on creating your very first website, start to finish, using HTML and CSS. In the first two parts, we covered very basic HTML and how it works, and then in the second part, we went over creating your layout, starting the layout pretty much, the backbone, like a skeleton for the content we're going to be filling in this tutorial. In this tutorial, we're going to be doing the header, and for our website that includes the logo and the navigation bar. Now in the second tutorial, I showed you the image of what we're going to try and achieve. We bring that back out here. Let's go ahead and view it. And that's pretty much it. It's pretty simple. Obviously the colors are just for mock-up. But in this tutorial, we're going to go over the logo here and the navigation. So let's jump right in and start back where we left off. So let's go ahead and open up our website in Notepad. And let's grab our style.css as well. Guess I could have prepared by making this the correct size first. Sorry about that. Okay. So what we're going to do is fill in our header with our content. Now we're going to have a logo and navigation. We're going to go for an image logo so we can work on styling the image, or pretty much just in the header, positioning the image where we want it. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is place our image within the proper directory so we can locate it for our website. So here's the image I'm going to be using. I created a simple logo in Photoshop. It took me about 2 seconds. So let's open up our website folder. And we have this images folder here that we created in the last tutorial. So let's drag our logo into the images folder. And now when we link to our image, we'll just go through the images folder. So let's go ahead and do that. So in our notepad here, inside the header, we're going to use the image tag to bring in that image. And the image tag is as simple as img. That's the image tag. But that's not going to do anything for us. It doesn't know what image, it has no idea what I'm doing. So we have to define a couple attributes for the image for it to work. The first one we're going to define is the source. That's src. Now this just links to the directory. It's pretty much the URL of the image. And in our case, the image is in the local folder for our website. So it's going to be images/logo.png. Now it will work just like this. If I hit Control S and come to our website here and open it up, you'll see that it works just fine. Ugly, but it works. But we have to do one more thing here, just to make sure everything's going to work fine. So let's say the person visiting your website is not allowing images to load. Maybe they're on a mobile phone that doesn't allow images, or maybe they just don't want to waste their bandwidth. Or maybe they're using a screen reader that you can't read an image, so it has to just skip over the image completely if they're using a screen reader. So what we can do is define an alternative text that the screen reader can read when it gets to the image. To do that, we type ALT for alt, and we define what the text should be. So in this case, it should be learn HTML logo. Now if we hit Control S, come to our browser and refresh, you'll see nothing's changed. That's because we can see the image. It doesn't have to show us anything. That's only if we cannot see the image or if we're using a screen reader. Really quick here, one thing that I've just kind of skipped over and over is the title for the web page. We need to define that, and that has to be defined within the head. Now the title for the web page is just this right here. What's in the tab of the browser, pretty much. What the search engines see, things like that. So let's go ahead and define that for this page, and the tag for title is title, and you have to close it there because the title will be in between the tags. So in our case, it's going to be Learn HTML Homepage or something like that. Let's just do Learn HTML Home. Control S, come to the browser, F5 to refresh, and you'll see Learn HTML, and we're on the home page. The next thing we're going to do is work on the styling for the website before we get into the navigation there. So in the header, we still have our background and we have the height and stuff. We're going to get rid of both of those, though. We are getting rid of the height because we want the height to be automatic depending on the content within the container. But a couple styles we are going to define is our padding and margins. Padding is pretty much space on the inside of the tag, and margin is space on the outside of the tag. That's the easiest way to remember it, I do believe. So the first thing we're going to define is our padding. And I could do that and say padding is 10 pixels. Now what that'll do is that'll put 10 pixels around all the sides inside header. So if I hit Control S and hit refresh, you'll see it got rid of the background color, and it's pushed this 10 pixels off of each side. It would do it over here too, but you can't see that, obviously. Or we can define them individually. So I could say I want the padding on the top to be 10 pixels. Now it won't define 10 pixels on any other side except for the top. So hit Control S to save, browser, refresh. You'll see it snugged it up to the left corner, and it would also to the right corner, but the top is down 10 pixels. So we're going to use a padding on the top and bottom just to create some space between our logo navigation and our body content. So we're going to say padding top, and then we're going to define a padding for the bottom. Now there's more efficient ways to do this by using shorthand styles, and we'll get into that in a more advanced tutorial. Like I said, this is for the very basics, and I am in no way going to be showing any advanced techniques in this tutorial. Okay, so let's hit Control S and look at that really quick. And there we go, exactly what we want. A little space below and on top of our logo. So the next thing we're going to do is place in our navigation. And to do that, we're going to use a list. And in HTML, a list is simply a list. And there's two different types of lists. So let's go over the one we're going to be using here. It's an unordered list. And unordered just means it's not in numerical order, pretty much. And to define an unordered list, we use the tag UL. That stands for unordered list. And then I'm going to enter down there and tab over. So with an unordered list, it relies on one more tag within it to create the list. And that one tag is the list item. What that unordered list is listing. And list item is LI, stands for list item. So now if I came in here and I said I wanted this to say home, so that's going to be a link to our home page. This is a list item of this unordered list. So let's copy this, let's paste it a couple times. I hit Control C on that, enter down and Control V to paste it. And I'm going to call this one about and contact. So if I hit Control S and come into our browser, hit F5 to refresh, you'll see that it is a list with these bullets on the side. Now if I used an ordered list, it would be a list with numbers on the side. But obviously, like everything else in web design, this can be completely changed using CSS. So we're going to do that now. So what we have to do is target this unordered list using CSS. And this is where stuff starts to get fun. So we're going to say, I want the headers unordered list. Now that is exactly how you would target that list if you do not give it a specific ID, and for this case we will not. Now what this does is it looks for the header, and then it looks for the next tag of UL. Or you could just think of it as looking for the UL within the header. It's as simple as that. We're then going to use our little curly braces, and let's define the styles for that unordered list. So for this situation, we do not want the bullets on the side of the list. So to get rid of those, we say list style none. So let's hit Control S, come to the browser, F5 to refresh, and you can see that it got rid of those bullets. So that means we targeted the UL properly, and we used the correct style to get rid of it. Well, now we want this UL to be to the right of the logo. And we know how to do that with CSS. We've already rearranged our elements here using floats. So what we have to do is we have to tell the image to float left, the image being our logo here, and we have to tell the list to float right. So let's do that really quick. So the first thing we have to do is target the image in the header. So we're going to say header image. That's so easy. Curly braces, and define our style. We want the style for the image to be float left. If I hit Control S, come view it, it's wrapping around the Learn HTML logo. Now we want the UL to be on the very far side over here. We want it to be in line, like in a specific line, and not stacked on top of each other, on the right side of the web page. So to do that, we're going to come in here to our UL styles, and we're going to say you float to the right. Control S, and now you see what that did? Okay, and really quick here before we break something by floating that list over there, we're going to define a height of the header. Make it 50 pixels, 50 pixels. Now hit Control S and come refresh here. You'll see that we have 50 pixels to work with, and that's managed to push that down there. But eventually our list is going to be in a straight line, so it's not going to make a difference. So we're going to say the image is floating left, the list of UL should be floating to the right. Now this is going to mess it up, I do believe, because of the way our tags are. But that's because this is higher than the height of our header tag. So what we're going to do is now make the list items display in line. So I'm going to say header UL LI. That targets the list item within the unordered list of the header. Curly braces. And we're going to say I want you to display, and I want you to display in a line, in line. Hit Control S and refresh. And now our list is no longer stacking on top of each other. They are appearing all to be on the same line. And you'll see everything stop breaking, and that's a good start. This is pretty ugly though, so we're going to want to fix that. We're going to make this not completely ugly. That's kind of a goal of ours, to make things not completely ugly. So what we're going to do is, using the list items, we have to think of a list item, like the actual tag, as what's wrapping the content. So you have to think of these as having LI around it. So controlling LI would move this around, or it would style this. So that's how you can think of the LI. So I'm going to put a margin to the left side of the list item. That way it'll push the items, it'll space the items apart, making it less cluttered. So I want to say margin to the left. Let's make it 20 pixels. Control S and F5. And you see we get space between the list items. Now I could have put margin to the right instead. But what that would have done is pushed this off the side here. Oops. And if you can see, we want this to be in line with this. So everything looks like it's on the exact same pixel it should be. So if we would have pushed that off there, it would have been offset and looked like we just screwed everything up. We don't want that look. Let's go ahead and make these list items, the home, about, and contact, into links. Now we went over links in the first tutorial and how to create them. So now let's use them for something not useless. We use our anchor tags, and then we define a hypertext reference or whatever href stands for, and that's just the URL you want that link to go to. So in this case, we want it to go to the index.html page. Now I hit Control S, come to our browser, and view that, and you can see there that we have a link. Once again, it's pretty ugly, but we'll deal with that in a little bit. So let's use this tag here for all of these, and do not forget to close them off. And this one's going to go to the About page, and this will go to the Contact page. Control S, refresh, and you can see these are not purple yet because that means we've not visited that page yet. Alright, so the next thing we want to do is define the styles for the links here in our header. We don't want to leave these default link styles for our main navigation. That's just not very stylish. So what we can do is we can come into CSS and tell them how we can come into CSS and tell it we can come into CSS and tell it how we want the links to appear. Now first thing I want to do is reorganize this. So I'm going to hit Control X, which is just cut. Come up under the header there and paste it in so it's in some sort of order there, so we're not looking around for the other header styles. We have all the header styles in one area. Okay, so now to define the styles for the anchor tags or the links in the header, we're going to use the exact same method we used in the prior stylings. We're going to say header, anchor. We're targeting the anchor tag within the header tag. The reason we're doing it this way is that so whenever we have other anchors in the web page, this style will not affect them. It will only affect the anchors within the header. So now we're getting into styling text. And to color the text of the anchor, we use color. Now this will color the actual text. For the link, we want the color for our text to be like a dark gray color. So we're going to come over here and we're going to use the hash key or the number key or pound key, whatever you want to call it, wherever you're from. And that means we're about to define a hexadecimal color for the anchor tag. And then we type in the code for our color. And in our case, it's going to be 777. Then we end that style, Control S, and F5. Now you see you get this gray color for the links. That's awesome. It's working exactly the way we want it to. And I don't know about you, but in some cases the underline is necessary and it looks good. But I don't believe in this case it belongs there. So we're going to get rid of that. To do that, we will say text decoration. None. That means I do not want any type of decoration to be able to be applied to these anchor tags. That applies to both underlines and like the line slashes going through the text itself. And I hit Control S, F5 to refresh. Okay, now we're going to define the font for the anchor tags here, because I don't like the default font that this browser uses. We're going to define our own. Now we don't have to define it using the actual anchor tag. We could define it within the UL, the LI, or even the header, since this is the only font within those. But for sake of simplicity, we're going to define it within the anchor tag style itself. And we're going to say font family. Now the reason you're not just using font is because you want to define a family of fonts so that a browser has something to fall back on if it does not support the font you are using. But in our case, we're going to be using Arial, and that's the pretty general font for most things. So I'm going to say Arial. Let's go for an example here. If I had Arial and then I didn't think that the browser I was using would read that, I would just type the other font name I have right there, and then it would fall back to that one, from this one to that one. And if it doesn't support this one, we could go, let's see, font name 2, and it would fall back to that one if it does not support this one, like that. And if it doesn't support that one, we could say sans serif. But if we do refresh in the browser here, we'll see the only one it applied was the Arial, because pretty much all browsers support Arial. So since we're using an Arial family, we're just going to define a fallback just in case, at the with a very slim chance with it not supporting the Arial family. So we're going to then say anything sans serif, pretty much. That's the exact same thing. It could just pick the font from that family. So hit Control S, and you can come in the browser and look and see it's still just Arial. Now let's work on making something happen when we roll over our links here. Say we want the color to change, or we want it to have an underline when we roll over it. So let's define that now using one of our first fancy CSS techniques here. We're going to say header anchor, and then we're going to define a pseudo class here. It's going to be like, okay, now whenever this tag does this, I want this style to come in place. So we're going to say whenever something hovers, whenever it becomes hovered, I want these styles to replace the default styles. So in our case, I'd say I want it to become the color 222. And that there. Control S, come to the browser, refresh. Now when I roll over, you'll see that it goes black, or blacker. And that's exactly what I want. Now I could say, whenever you roll over, I want the text decoration to be underlined. Control S, refresh, and you'll see now I get an underline below the text when I roll over as well. I don't want that though. I'm just showing that as an example. You may want to do that. And I believe that's pretty much it for this video. We got the header set up with our logo here and our navigation. And we have some fancy rollovers now for the links. When you roll over the link, it changes colors. And our about will take us to about.html. Obviously there's not an about.html, but I'm just showing you that it goes to about.html when you click on it. And contact goes to contact.html. Now when we click home, it takes us to the home page. Alright, so thank you for watching the third video in this tutorial series on creating your very first website from scratch using HTML and CSS. We are just now starting to get into the fun parts. We're diving in, we're scratching the surface now. And it's only going to get better. We're going to learn a lot more. We're going to get things rolling here, and it's going to be a lot of fun. So stick around, subscribe, so you get updated when we release the next video. And once again, thank you for watching. Now, I don't know about you. In some cases, I don't know about you.